Welcome back to the Flip Side of Death podcast. I'm your host, Lynn Stone, and today I'm going to do things just a little differently. So, I've been giving you a lot of information over the last several weeks about setting up your wills and your trusts and all the different things you need to think about. And today I was looking on MSN's website and I come across an article and I thought, I think that's something I should share with you guys. Okay, so this is the article that I read, and I thought, this is really good because this lines right up with what I've been talking to you all about. And I just wanted to share this with you. So I'm going to read it for those that aren't looking at this on YouTube. So you know what I'm doing here. So the article starts off, it is an MSN article by Quentin Farrell, and it was written back in March. And it says, "It's complicated. My husband, 61, wants to leave me everything. His kids will hate me. What should I do?" And so it goes on. It says, "Dear Quentin, what are some fair ways for a later in life marriage to disperse wealth or plan for end of life? I'm 44 and my husband is 61. We're both in great health. I have no children and he has 2 adult children. I also have nieces whom we are very close to. We recently experienced some family deaths, which inspired us to get organized. We each brought approximately $200,000 into the relationship. Our combined net worth is now about $1.5 million and growing. His children are financially unstable, though we do not support them. My fear is that they would feel entitled to everything their father has, despite never being told or led to believe that. I know it's complicated. I guess my real question is, in later in life marriages, is it typical for an older husband to leave everything to his younger wife, or should there be some sort of split upon death? What's a fair way to assess it? Ironically, we're on opposing sides. He wants to leave everything to me, but not tell his children, which would make me public enemy number 1. I think a fairer approach would be for a larger percentage to go to me, with the remainder split between his kids. I will uphold his wishes, but if I outlive him and there is no agreement in place, I would likely give little to nothing to his children because they are irresponsible spendthrifts. On the flip side, if he outlives me, how do I financially protect my nieces? We just want to do right by everyone. I know it's a personal choice, but I'm curious how other moneyest readers have approached this. We want to iron this out before putting anything in writing and filing with an attorney." Signed, wife and stepmom. So as it says, this is an article on the moneyest column on MSN. And so the response, it says, "Dear stepmom, whatever you do, you won't be thanked for it." That's rather gloomy, but don't seek or expect a 5-star review from your stepchildren, especially with 2 adult children whose needs are exacerbated by their own financial instability and likely growing resentment that their father has enough money to answer all of their problems, but has married a woman 20 years younger. Does that sound harsh? If so, I hope it lights a fire under you. Whatever you do, it should be decisive. Take emotion out of your decision. If you try to please everyone, you will end up pleasing no one, least of all your good self. If you try to please them halfway by giving them a portion of their father's wealth, they will end up wanting more. Let's say you give them $100,000 each, basically what your husband brought into the marriage and is technically considered separate property. They may cash the proverbial check before the sun sets on the bank that day, but their gratitude will soon give way to curiosity. How much did she get? And soon it will lead to confusion and resentment. You build up assets of $1.5 million as a couple. That is marital property that should go wholly to your husband upon your death and to you upon his death. No one, not his children or your nieces or the next door neighbor's second cousin twice removed, has a right to that money. It's your marriage, your money, your life. If you start bending and twisting your wants and wishes and morals and boundaries to suit other people, you will experience a lifetime of being provoked, manipulated, and coerced into doing what other people want you to do. That's why I say you should take a cold, hard look at the situation and the players and suit yourself. You are not living your life and creating wealth for retirement so you can set a significant percentage aside for his 2 children. There are 2 people in this marriage, not 4. By all means, your husband can communicate in broad terms that a trust will only be dispersed upon your death, but resist any bullying or intrusive questions. You can put your assets into a qualified terminable interest property or QTIP trust, family trust, or life interest trust. Then what? You will hopefully live another 40 years, by which time your assets will have grown considerably. The trust could leave $100,000 to each of your nieces if you die first, and $100,000 to each of his kids if he goes first. Any prospective heirs will then have to rely on their own skills to build their finances, rather than relying on a third party. You could split your estate 4 ways, 25% each if you have 2 nieces, or give your 2 stepchildren 25% and split the rest between your nieces and charities. Also, create a will, powers of attorney, and health directives. Gee, that sounds familiar, doesn't it? Anyway, back to the story. Do what you feel is right. There are no right or wrong answers to how blended families arrange their estate planning. You do not need to give your stepchildren a full accounting of your estate plan. They may see you as public enemy number one, whether or not you try to appease and include them. Instead, take your spouse's lead. It's your blood, sweat, and tears. Honor what you and your husband have created together. So I shared that because I thought, I think that happens so often where we have these situations where we're trying to please people about or thinking about others whenever we're doing our planning, of course. You're thinking about our families, thinking about our kids. Of course, having a blended family that certainly adds to the strain a little bit. So, in my personal situation, I have 3 stepchildren and then my own biological daughter and now a biological son. And so, what should happen? Like, how should I do my estate planning, right? How should I break up the little bit of money that I'm going to have left over for them? And that's definitely something that I think a lot of people struggle with, because I think generally we want to do right by our family, but you hear so many times about people who don't want to spoil their children, or they want to use everything that they've earned, which I can't say that I necessarily disagree with that as well. So it's a very difficult scenario and situation. But I saw that article and I thought I wanted to share that with you all, because you hear me talking about doing your wills, your trust, your making sure you have your advance directives and your powers of attorney and all those things. But that's kind of textbook stuff, right? Now we're dealing with reality of life and the messiness of life and relationships and families. And so I thought, this would be a good topic to discuss. And I tend to agree with the author of this. Quentin Farrell is the guy that wrote this, or that put this article together. I guess he runs this column. And so I thought, I agree with Quentin that she can do what she wants with it, and they can agree to do something, or, they can pay nothing out until they both pass away. And then at that time, then split it up. I think that would probably be the best way, in my opinion. Everything goes to the surviving spouse. And then once they pass away, then everything is split among those left behind. I think that seems the most fair, because you never know, right? You never know. So let's just play this out for a minute. So let's just say that this lady, she's 44, he's 61. Not to be negative Nelly here, but the likelihood of the man dying before the woman is pretty likely. Men tend not to live very long, although there are some people that do live a little longer. But it's pretty likely that he will pass before she does. And with her being almost 20 years his junior, I mean, she still has like a whole life to live. So if he were to pass and that money was there, I mean, who knows what she's going to need whenever she's that age or older, whenever she gets to the age where he passes or surpasses it, which happens quite a bit, happens quite often. What is the need? I think the other thing is, I would like to add in there that things change. Money changes people. Money brings out the worst in people and families, because it's greed. Greed and grief do not mix. I heard that in a seminar last year, and I thought, that's brilliant, because it's so true. Once people think money's on the table, then they get very greedy. And so, whenever things don't work out the way they think it should, then it gets very ugly, because their expectations are not being met. And then, whoever's holding the money, whoever, is in control of it, then they're the bad guy. And it's not fun being the bad guy. I've been in that position a couple times, and, it is what it is. I do agree with this guy, and I think that it's pretty solid advice. And I think that should you find yourself in a similar situation, this is definitely something that you would want to think about and really kind of play out the pros and cons. I mean, ultimately, whenever you pass, you don't want your family fighting. You don't want your kids fighting against each other. You don't want your spouse left to be the one to have to answer the questions. interestingly, the husband's perspective of, give it all to the wife and don't say anything to the kids. I don't know that I necessarily agree with that. I think that causes that sets her up for a very difficult time once he passes, because now she has to deal with the kids and explain the thought process. I think if I were to do it differently, I would say, maybe he needs to write a letter of intent. Why did you not give the kids this amount of money? And, just telling them like, hey, look, you guys are you're not responsible with your money. And, I don't feel that it's right that I should, that you should get this amount of money. And, my wife is still alive and she needs to survive on this money, and you can get some whenever she passes away. I think that makes more sense than just letting it fall all on her. Because at that point, then she's grieving his loss, then also having to deal with the piranhas of kids. And, it's just a very sticky situation that I think is somewhat avoidable if you just have those open, honest conversations up front. So anywho, I thought that was good. I thought it was an interesting article. And if you like this format, let me know. So many things. I see so many little articles and videos and things that pop up. And it's like, man, that would be so good to share with people, because I'm sure that because of the Facebook algorithms, I see a lot more things that are along this line than most normal people do. But it's okay. I'm okay with that, because I feel like that is right in my bailiwick. It's right in my wheelhouse. And I think that is stuff that people don't necessarily think about, but it's something to consider as you're making your plans. And whenever you have these different family dynamics and blended families and, difficult situations that you're living with currently, that, whenever you pass, these are things that are going to pass on to somebody else. So being mindful about what that looks like for other people, for those that you love, for your spouse, for your children. I mean, let's just say that one of your kids is in a good financial state and you have another kid that's not, and having to explain that to somebody. So that's just my opinion on it, but I feel like it's definitely worth the conversation. Let me know in the comments if you've ever had a scenario like this, or someone that's had a situation like this where, the parent passed away and left the kids something or nothing, or it all went to the stepmom. And, the other thing I just thought about this kind of sets the stepmom up for being like cast in that evil stepmother look, right? Like, oh, the stepmother got all the money. She's so evil. She's not giving us anything. And as a stepmom, I kind of hate that because it's undue stigma that we already carry. And now it's just adding to it. It's like, oh, let's just add on more reason why people have such a negative connotation with stepmothers, right? This evil stepmother persona. So I definitely think that if you're thinking about this and this is something that you're challenged with and you're planning, definitely consider doing a letter of intent or a final wishes letter or something like that. I've talked about those before, to really explain your thought processes, and so that they don't blame the parent that's left over, like whether the step parent, biological or step, it doesn't matter. Whoever's left holding the bag at the end, that they're the ones that will be looked at negatively if things don't go the way someone thinks they should. So anyway, okay guys, story time is over for today. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope that you enjoyed it. If you did, please share with your friends. Otherwise, death is inevitable, chaos is optional. Until next time, I'll see you next week. Bye guys.